It's our 3 o'clock session time, and after we've seen quite a lot today about sort of shooting films, now what? And that's what our next person is going to tell us all about. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for Beatrice Neuman!
Thank you, Darren. And predictably, the room has cleared out a bit when it comes to distribution. It shouldn't, because it's super important. So, as Darren said, I like to call this session, you've made your film, what now? Because that is the bit people don't think about, especially as filmmakers. The key thing where people get into it is to make beautiful content. And I've been on a lifelong mission to kind of get people, and especially filmmakers, to think about how to get their content actually to an audience. So now you might think, so B is the head of skills and industry engagement at Screen Yorkshire. What does she know about distribution? Well, that's actually my background. So I've been for 3 years at Screen Yorkshire and have been involved there in skills delivery, but actually my background, and I worked 20 years in film sales and distribution, 12 of those as an acquisitions executive and manager for UK sales companies. So this next half hour is a very difficult half hour for me because I'm gonna try and condense into it and try to explain to you the world of distribution. And I could talk for days about that. I used to teach whole modules about that, so quite a challenge for me, but let's do it. So just very quickly, I tell you a bit about my background because it kind of, hopefully is a nice introduction to this. So I didn't study film at all, like a lot of people who work in film, and especially in the distribution bit. I studied politics and languages, and just didn't want to work in politics really, and ended up in the media industry as kind of, you know, it was started actually in broadcast, in factual, and when you studied something like political sciences, it felt like a kind of good place to go next, and a lot of people who studied with me actually wanted to do that right from the start. And so I worked for a few German broadcasters, public broadcasters, kind of the equivalent to the BBC, just because it's federal. In every region there's a separate one. And I was very lucky. The first project I was working on was the International Media Arts Award, which was an international arts competition for art made with computers, audiovisual art, so any kind of video art was part of that. And it was very innovative, so that was in 2001. And unfortunately it doesn't exist anymore, and we produced 20 hours of broadcast for Germany, Austria and Switzerland, German-speaking Switzerland, and we were a team of 3, so that's a teeny tiny team to do 20 hours of broadcast of over 9 months. I came to the UK in 2003 and kind of thought I would kind of work in that area in factual, and I was looking for my first job, knocking literally on people's doors, so actually physically went there and knocked and asked for a job. And actually the door that opened for me was a film production company. Now I had also started in the meantime to work on short films. I ended up working on about a dozen of short films as a script supervisor. So, and I always had a love for film, so kind of didn't feel like an alien place. It was a runner intern job, unpaid, of course, for 3 months. And at the end of it, and you couldn't stay more than 3 months, at the end of it, they said to me, well, we don't have a job for you, and unfortunately, we can't keep you on. But there's this sales company who we work with, and they're looking for an in-house runner. Do you wanna have a go at it? And we would recommend you to them. And I thought, oh well, it's not really what I want to do. I'd rather make content. And I had no clue what a sales company was. And I thought, well, but it can't hurt. And I still work in film. It's paid. Have to pay rent. So let's do it. And that was it. That's when I entered that world, and I kind of left it recently, but I haven't left it for good, I would say, and I still have a massive passion for distribution. So so Ladies in Lavender was the film we worked on at Scala Productions, which was Nick Powell's production company, who that year became actually the director of the National Film and Television School. Then I went to Winchester Entertainment, which was a quite established sales company in film, TV, and actually that did also music publishing. And they were bought out very quickly by Content Film, an American production company at Pressman, who was one of the people who was part of that company, produced films like American Psycho. And so they decided to have a sales company, and for some reason decided they're going to set it up in London rather than in New York. Oops, sorry about that. And they took over. I had, even though I was kind of in-house running and then later office management, I had negotiate two bits, and I'm saying that because I think it's really important for you as you go out into that world after university, is you can negotiate stuff even when you're just starting out. I had negotiated two things. One, that I can take time off to make short films and work on short films, and that I don't have to take it as a holiday. They paid me so poorly, so it wasn't, I didn't have to squeeze too hard about that. And the other thing was that I made them put in my contract I'm also a script reader, because I didn't want to be stuck in admin without having that way into that bigger world I wanted to be in. And that was the best thing I ever did, because obviously I read scripts, I wrote reports that went in front of the sales team, and the head of sales, lo and behold, a few months in, then offered me a position at acquisitions. So what is acquisitions? Basically, I was kind of the connection between the filmmakers and the business world. So a sales company, what they do is they license the rights, the distribution rights to a film worldwide, usually, from the filmmakers, from the copyright owners. So whoever has the rights to the film, which usually in the UK is held by a special purpose vehicle, an SPV, which is a limited company where all the people who have a stake in the film, basically they put it in there, so there's one entity which contracts. And so my job was to find content which we could sell worldwide, and selling worldwide means you go to festivals, you go to film markets, you meet distributors from all around the world, and you basically sub-license the films to them on behalf of the filmmakers. And so the difference between a sales company and distributor is really a sales company does business to business. They take on the worldwide rights, and then they sell it on to distributors who then put it into cinemas, on VOD platforms, and so on, in their territories. And I'm saying particularly territories and not countries, because, for example, if you're a UK distributor, usually if you buy a film or you acquire a film, and buying is actually a misnomer, because again they license the distribution rights for a certain amount of time, then you actually usually take on UK and Ireland. So that's the Republic of Ireland, not just Northern Ireland. because most UK distributors cover both of these countries. And then you have odd Caribbean islands, you have the Channel Islands, Isle of Man, and all of these things, which are technically not part of the UK. So let's go a bit further. So another few things I did. So I then went on to work for The Works and other sales companies, and we did some documentaries, and I know you have a lot of factional going on here. So that one with the lots of laurels of festivals, that's The Cove, which won the Oscars in 2009, I want to say, maybe it was 10, I think it was 9. We were really good with documentaries, love working on documentaries, so that's a road, which was a Northern Irish one, Anvil, very good fun. And then in 2015, I decided I'm going to go freelance. I had, at that point, the sales and distribution world got quite difficult, and I had to turn down a lot of films which were just too small for my company to take on, and which really struggled, and I found that quite frustrating. So I decided I'm gonna go freelance and work with filmmakers directly. And also one thing that happened then, I started teaching and training quite a lot. And so, for example, I started teaching at Sheffield Hallam and trained a lot of filmmakers. But I still also work with filmmakers on distributing their films. I also established an event as part of the Edinburgh International Film Festival called Distribution Rewired. One of the things I thought I would be doing is building a VOD platform. Then worked out that the business model doesn't actually work. If you want to do a small bespoke platform, you always will be dependent on other people's money. So I ditched that, but out of that came this event because I realized that it was actually quite hard to navigate that landscape at that time. It was still kind of fairly new. Netflix wasn't what it is today. And so thought, well, if I'm, as a distribution expert, can't navigate that world, how can anybody else? So that event basically was there to kind of educating myself and with me the public, and that meant filmmakers. So this is all the things I did. So basically, at the moment I went freelance, I became a one-woman distribution outfit and training outfit, and that means you have to do absolutely everything. You can see here social media, marketing, all the distribution bits, and then training, of course. And I did also quite a bit of script development. And then I ended up at Screen Yorkshire. So let's talk a little bit about the UK film landscape and cinema landscape. So I've got for you the data from 2023. They always are a bit delayed, the data. I mean, we're almost at the end of 2024. So in February, March or so, you might get these data, and it's the BFI who pulls these data together and does reports. Cinema admissions, so as you know, obviously the cinemas closed during the pandemic, so it has been kind of a slow building back up to pre-pandemic levels, and we're still not at pre-pandemic levels in the distribution world. And production is a bit different. That has recovered a bit quicker, even though we had a massive blow with the strikes last year in the US. And even though it's something which happened in the US, it had a massive impact in the UK, because a lot of content that is produced in the UK and this UK qualifying is made by American studios who shoot and work and bring that work and those projects to the UK. So, and a lot of UK talent, because UK talent is absolutely punching above their weight in terms of their international success and their success in the US. So they're all signed up to the US union. So anything which sniffed vaguely American, they would boycott during the strike, also even if it's shot entirely in the UK. So, so we are still reeling from that this year. But as you can see, even though that happened, that affected for large part 2023, we won't see really the effect of that in distribution until later this year, because it takes about a year from when a film is finished, and that's almost a minimum to get into cinemas. Actually, not even the studio films are different in that. TV is much faster. TV can be within weeks after the episodes are finished cutting, can be broadcast. But because there's this whole process of selling and acquiring, and then there's all this negotiating who goes out first, and then there's the festival circuit, there's a bit of a delay. So, so that means, but as you can see, it's the sector is building up, and we are getting a bit closer to pre-pandemic levels. We made a lot of money at the box office again. And so when we now come to the third point, so last year, 822 films were released into UK cinemas in the UK and Ireland. So I have a question for you. How often do you think the average UK person goes to the cinema per year? Shout out some numbers. 3? Yeah. 5. 3, very good call. That's pretty much it. Probably a bit less at the moment. So it's probably 2 point something. And so if you break that down, 822 films released in the cinema, and that's just the films which are actually big enough to get a cinema release, and actually who have a distributor or maybe work with a consultant like I was, that's almost 16 films per week. And we're not quite at pre-pandemic levels. It used to be, on average, 20 films per week which were released. So if you think that the average person only goes 3 times a year to the cinema, that's a whole lot of films. And that's new films every week. I'm not talking about films being in the cinema for 10 weeks, like you have with big tentpoles. So how many of these 16 films per week, average at the moment, do you think get reviewed in a magazine, in press? Again, shout out some numbers.
1, 2, 3.
Very pessimistic. But you're not wrong. So it's about 2 or 3 films, well, 3 films, which probably get reviewed by absolutely everybody. So it's the same film, which everybody picks upon. It's obviously the bigger films usually. And then you have, like, The Guardian, for example, who reviews more than 3 films. They might pick out 2 or 3 other smaller independent films. So between all of the press, and I'm talking from Metro to The Guardian, to the broadsheets, and Empire Magazine, and all of these different outlets for film reviews, you probably, out of the 16 films, 6 films get some kind of look in from the press, which obviously helps to make a public aware. It doesn't even matter if they're reviewed well or if they're reviewed badly, but at least people find out about them. So, so if you're looking at UK films, in terms of films that get released, so almost 40% last year were actually UK productions, and also it's around that size in terms of the box office receipts. almost 40% actually were generated by UK film. But now the question is, what is a UK film? What do you think was the highest grossing film in the UK last year? Barbie? Yeah. Barbie was the highest grossing, and then Oppenheimer came second, actually. So very good call, very well done. Now these are both studio films, and Barbie probably accounts for 5% of these numbers. So what was made at the box office last year. So the kind of slightly depressing fact for independent filmmakers, at least. So if you thinking you might, be kind of more indie, you don't want to work with the studios, is that around 97 to 98% of the box office earnings are earned by studio films, and that leaves about 2 to 3% to independent films. Now, Barbie and Oppenheimer are both UK qualifying films. So when you look at these 40% share of the box office and share of the market value, it's actually a lot of the Disney output, if not almost all of it, is UK qualifying, because they do a huge chunk of work in the UK, which they tick enough boxes. And the BFI, the British Film Institute, is the certifying authority. They tick enough boxes in terms of talent, the money they spend, and blah, 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 that they actually are UK qualifying films. So when you look at these numbers, you have to just kind of see it in the context of that. Now, and if you look, the independent films at the box office actually wasn't too bad, but it's going in the direction, pre-pandemic reaction. So this 2023 was 3.8% in terms of the box office value, which actually is pretty good, because it usually really is around 2 and 3. And the only thing what happened with the pandemic, the studios were the last one out of the gate in terms of putting films again into the cinemas, because they needed all the cinemas open and all the restrictions gone for them to make enough money for the hugely expensive films and hugely expensive promotion of these films. So that independent film had actually a really great market share in UK cinemas during just coming out of the pandemic. Already, we're almost there, so I'm going to have to kind of rush through a few things through. But at least you got the context. So this is kind of what I want to, the next 10 minutes, maybe 15 if I can squeeze 5 more minutes in, I want to talk about is short film distribution, because you as emerging filmmakers probably that's the first one you need to think about and take care of. And the reason why it's so important that you hear about it, know about it, is because you're going to be the people doing this work, because there isn't that much help out there for you in terms of getting your films in front of an audience. So this is why I am on a mission to get you guys to think about this as early as possible and every time you do it and make a film. And so that's why you in the middle there are really fat and big. And then obviously, and this won't come as a surprise, festivals are hugely important for short films, and probably the most obvious thing for you if you think about, okay, what happens with my short afterwards. But there are a few other people or agents you need to be aware of. There's a good amount of people around on a consultancy basis, individuals who help short filmmakers to get their film out there. Broadcasters also show shorts. They usually commission, and I will have a quick I will talk to you in a moment about that. And then obviously online platforms. And all of that you should be aware of. There are a few sales agents, short distributors. Well, when you go to feature film, the terminology is very, very strict in terms of what's a sales agent or a sales company and a distributor. In the short film world, it's all a bit mixed up. So a short film sales agent or short film distributor is usually the same thing. So this is kind of what it looks at for a feature film, and I have been very conservative in terms of the amount of people and organizations involved in getting a film to an audience. I won't get into that because I want to talk a bit more practical about what you should be, how you can start and what you should be thinking about. And what you need is a strategy. You have to think about it. You shouldn't just kind of randomly submit films to an audience. Yes. Up to my eye level again. Excellent. So, festival strategy. So, and I talk in a moment about that more, so I will skip that for now. But you also need to think about the other places, and that is online distribution. You need to think about it as well, because I mean, a lot of you think, oh yeah, I just put it on my YouTube channel, but do you actually have people who look at your channel? Because there's too many cat videos out there who compete with you. And then also, actually, do festivals like it if your film is online? Probably not. And then marketing strategy and the social media campaign, because actually what's really important, and the thing I want to quickly touch upon is, before you even start thinking about which festivals you might be submitting to and where there could be an online space, is think about how you're going to make this film work for you. And what's important is, so you might have different goals. You might want to try and make money with it, pretty hard on a short film, but, you know, I have met filmmakers. I met this filmmaker from Oldham who told me after I met him already 2 or 3 times, the best thing about, and the best selling point about him as a filmmaker is that he made a short which had 4 million views on YouTube. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing, and if you have that many views, you actually make advertising money. So there's some way to generate some money, but I would say realistically, you have to have the right kind of film, and you have to actually have already an audience to get that So, but it then really depends, and you probably want to hit more than one goal. You probably have 3 or 4 of these goals, or your other goals I haven't listed. I just picked out some typical ones. And what I would recommend is pick a big goal and think about it in career terms, because the short film is just a stepping stone in your career as a filmmaker, as a content producer. And think about what that dream goal is over there. So, and we always ask that when we work with people, where do you want to eventually get to? And don't be shy. Really be ambitious. You know, if you want to be a showrunner in LA, then that is your dream goal, and you put it there, because everything, what you do, and that might take you 20 years to get to, maybe it gets you there in 10, but everything, and that short is part of it, is a step towards that goal. So you need to think about how hard you're going to work that short. So also, to actually get your film out there, even if you do the minimum, you need some money. So let's quickly talk about that. And by the way, you can have these slides, so you can look over that, because I'm really rushing through this. So if you have a really, really great short, then actually it can cost you up to 3 to 5K in terms of monies to make it actually work and make the best of it. You can spend a lot less money and already actually go quite a far way. But the first thing you have to think about is, and that's why it's so important to be selective with your festivals, is festivals charge submission fees. When you submit a film to a festival, you actually have to pay money in most cases. And especially the festivals you probably want to get in, most of them charge there's very few of them who don't charge you. And it might be a fiver, some it might be £25 for a short film. So you need some money, and you have to think about that, and you have to get that money from somewhere. Also, if you get to a point where actually you have a funded short, so for example, BFI Network, who's a short film funder, and you should aspire to get in front of, you can actually build a marketing line into your short film budget, which pays for festival submission and pays for you to go actually to a festival. The best thing I can tell you about is the British Council Short Film Support Scheme. It's on, this is linked up, so it takes you straight there, but it's basically British Council Film, and they have, you can apply for money to go to festivals. So if they have a key festival list, which looks like that, and this is actually not the latest one, as you can tell, but this is just to illustrate. And this is a great place for you also to think about what are the important festivals, because these are festivals which the industry recognizes as important short film festivals, and these are the festivals the British Short Support Scheme supports for you to actually give you some money to actually go and travel to these festivals. It's international festivals they support. UK festival, they assume you can make your way there. And the other good list, and you will see there's a lot of crossover in terms of what the festivals are, is the BAFTA key festival list. And this list you find, and you have to look for it a little bit. Every time I try to find the latest version, it takes me half an hour to remember how to get there. It's when you, if you search on the BAFTA website how to submit a short film, it's part of the guidelines. And reading guidelines for festivals is super important. Now, why is it important? Because actually, one thing, if there's one thing I want, well, actually there's probably a lot of things I want you to take out of this, but one thing, hopefully you won't forget, and that's also really important for later, you always have to start with the big festivals and then go to the most local and the smaller festivals. And the reason for that is that big festivals want premier status, even for short films. Especially when you get to feature film, it's super important. Short films, there's a bit of more wiggle room. But that's why, don't be, think, oh, let's start small, let's start in Horsforth, at the Horsforth Film Fest, Short Film Festival, which I don't know if there is a festival, but I'm sure there's something. Or the pub shows it in their upstairs room or something. Don't start there. The first time you show a film in public and you talk about it in public and allow people to come as a public and not just cast and crew, it's your world premiere. And then you have given your world premiere away. So don't do that, please. And then you have international premieres, you have UK premiere, you have a North American premiere, you have a Japanese premiere. Think in when you think festival strategy, think in premiere terms. So these are the biggest festival, and actually to tell you right, in the world for features, and they all do shorts as well, so also for short. If you get your short in one of these festivals, and maybe it's not your graduation short, maybe it's some short down the line, these festivals, they're very loyal to their filmmakers. Once you get a film in there, they track you. So if you come with your feature film, or a lot of them now also show television content, high-end television content, they will track you, and when you submit, you're at the top of the pile. I just flick through this. These are different, and I tell you what there are. Festivals which are important. So there you go, UK Specialists, Short Film Festivals. Encounters, unfortunately, didn't happen this year. Hopefully it will be back. One of the best UK short film festivals. Also great festival to go to. So I'm actually not going to talk you through it because we're coming to the end, but you get these slides so you can look through it, and I explained it all. But let's kind of round this up. Start with the big ones. think about your goals. And obviously there's a team usually who has made this film. There might be different goals from different team members. For example, there's a festival in Poland which actually awards cinematographers. And so if the kind of low-hanging fruit is this short film is a show reel for you, yeah? And it's a showcase of your talent, and that includes every person who has worked on that short. So that might be a reason why you want to get into a festival, or they have really good prize money. That might be a really good reason to get into a festival and kind of at least make the cost back of going there. So consider your goals. Actually, and this is for shorts harder to do than it is for feature films. Smaller festivals, if they sell tickets, you can ask for screening fees, and depending how often they show it and how big of an audience they have, it can be a couple of 100 quids you can earn there. Also, it's good. The big festivals are really great to build kind of your career, but the short film specialists, they are kind of, obviously because they only program shorts, the chance that you get in is quite good. Then go to festivals, very important. Always think beyond that short. Think about what's next. What do you need to get in front of funding bodies to make your next film and to get on the next step of your career? So very important to think beyond that. Make contact with the programmers. If they know you and you submit your film, you send the programmer a little email and say, look, I submitted my short and I met you at this festival and it was really nice to meet you, blah, 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 blah. Would you have a look? Even they might not respond to you, but it's really hard to ignore something like that because they're humans. And sometimes, especially you guys, you students, and then even if you're freshly graduated, you can go and knock and say, oh, can you waive the submission fee? If you know the programmer, you can send them a little email and say, look, I want to submit my film, but I'm really poor. I'm, just graduated, haven't got a job yet. Would you waive the submission fee? And they give you a code, and you don't have to pay the submission fee. So these are my top tips. Other things you should be doing at festivals, there are marketplaces, there are excellent grounds for networking, and also the funders are there. That's where you meet all these important people. These are kind of all the kind of places, kind of examples of places where shorts are being shown and where you want to get them to. And to round this up, I wanted to quickly make sure you know the difference between those three different things. So commissioning is broadcasters rarely buy shorts unless you have been BAFTA nominated or even Oscar nominated. Then they probably buy the short of you, and then you probably have a short film distributor because they love working with successful shorts, and they will make that deal for you. But normally they commission, like Random X Channel 4 they're basically interested in you as a talent, and then they give you some money to make some content for something. Acquisitions, that is when somebody actually comes in and takes finished short of you, and that's true also. That's obviously what I did in the feature world. And self-publishing, that is when you put it out yourself. So this is just some resources, and one thing just to quickly say, what you also need is a festival pack. When you submit to festivals, they need a whole bunch of information. And so it's like synopsis, log lines, taglines, and super important, and this is, again, that's another thing I really want you to remember. It doesn't matter what type of content you will be doing in the future. Have good high-res stills, because without good images, you cannot promote a film. And that's my last word on it, and you get all of that. And I included a festival pack I used of a film, so you can look at that, and then you know what it looks like.
Wonderful. Do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, we've got one over there. We've got two. I'll go to Ulrich first, and I'll come to you, Jacob. Hold on a second.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Bay.
Hello.
I was really struck by the figures for audiences and the way top big films are basically the ones that make the money and nothing else seems to. How much of that do you think is audience-driven? Because I've heard a lot about how COVID has affected it, but it seems to be that the audience generally is consuming or wants to consume films in a very different way than it did even five years ago.
It actually hasn't changed that much because, funny enough, in terms of admissions, so that is, admissions is people buying tickets to go to the cinema, so it's people going to the cinema. It's actually kind of creeping back up to pre-pandemic levels. So this whole thing that young people don't go to the cinema and that VOD killed the cinema is just simply not true yet. However, I used to, so I taught at Hallam all this kind of distribution festival marketing stuff for 8 years, and I surveyed the students at the beginning of the module, and I asked them about their viewing habits. And when I first started, it was really depressing because nobody went to the cinema. That was 2015. But then 2 years later, with Netflix being more readily available and family subscriptions to Netflix, people actually watched more films again, online at least, and pirated less because pirating was terrible in 2015, and it's again terrible. But actually what came back is people going, and this is obviously film students, going more to the cinema, and young people going more to the cinema. So actually, cinema, the trouble is independent film. They are really the difficult ones. So I can't stress enough, if you, and it doesn't matter if you, what nationality you are, if you want to make films here as a UK filmmaker, which the moment you make films here, you are, these are the films, and I'm not talking about the UK qualifying big studio films, is go and watch other people's films. It's so important because actually there's a really depressing statistic that only 20% of first-time feature filmmakers make a second film. So, but it is because it's really hard. It's really worthwhile, and persistence is the best thing you can bring to the table. Just keep doing it, because it does pay off eventually, assuming you're a good filmmaker. But that is really tough. So independent cinemas, smaller festivals, and smaller films, they're really under pressure, and with them also distributors and sales companies who deal with these films. It's really tough, but it is, one thing I found out through your service is that even though a lot of people actually went to the cinema and a lot of students went to the cinemas, they went to see the big blockbusters, even though they admitted that actually they thought most of them were pretty shit. But and they watched the indie films online. So that's quite interesting. But they're quite hard to find online. So it's like, we obviously have Movie who kind of are firmly established in that space. But it took Movie a long time to actually make money and come out of this subsidized way, and they're still subsidized. So it's, unfortunately, I can't say anything else that it is tough, but it's worthwhile, and I have loved every minute working in distribution and haven't completely given up on it.
I've got time for one more, I think.
Okay, hi Beatrice. Do you think that indie films should have a wider distribution so they can reach a bigger audience?
Absolutely, it's just hard to convince everybody involved. So if you think about a UK distributor, there's only 2 distributors really who have cinemas. That's Curzon Artificial Eye and Picture House. And so they are the 2 distributors who have some control how they release films in the cinema. Everybody else has to sell it into the cinemas, chains, and independent cinemas, which are, independent from them. And obviously they have to convince VOD platforms. They have to convince every single place, including ships, hotels, airplanes. Don't forget about that. Education, if a university wants to show films, they have to license it. They have to convince everybody. So it's quite a hard job, isn't it? Now, other countries have different systems, and it has been kind of a ever ongoing conversation in the UK if there should be quotas introduced. For example, France, the reason why independent cinema in France is still going very strong is the French cinemas and television stations, and they make French TV, Canal Plus in particular, they're very important and the CNC, they're very important in terms of actually funding independent films in France. They have a quota. So 20% of French broadcast output has to be French. And the cinemas have also quota, I'm not quite sure what that is. So, one thing to actually have more independent films available for you to watch in the cinema would be actually to actively support UK films from a government basis.
Ladies and gentlemen, show your appreciation for Beatrice Neuman. Thanks, Beatrice.